Hello there. What's going on, everybody? Today I'm going to be bringing to you my review of Outer Rim, the new 1 to 4 player game from Fantasy Flight Games. This is a board game, it's a multiplayer game, and it's Star Wars, so it definitely has everything that I'm looking for, but how good is it? I'm going to take a look at that in this video. Also, I encourage you to stick around towards the end of the video because I do have a giveaway winner or two to announce, so that will also be towards the end of the video, so watch all the way to the end. All right. With that being said, I want to talk about a couple of things about this game because there's going to be some pros and cons. While I do genuinely like this game, I do have also some criticisms for it. So we're going to talk about all of that, and we're going to kind of break it down by category. So first off, I want to talk about the theme of Outer Rim. In Outer Rim, you're playing as a scoundrel or a bounty hunter or some kind of smuggler, or you're playing some kind of scum and villainy type of person in the outer rim of the galaxy, which is a great theme for Star Wars. It's also great considering the time it's been released, as Solo was our most recent Star Wars film at the time that this game has come out. So it's very much present in people's minds, and that whole bounty hunter, scum, smuggler, kind of scoundrel type of mechanic is just a very good idea for a game at this period in time. It also suits really well to being a multiplayer game. This game is 1 to 4 players. Now, when I say 1 player, it does also have a solo mode with an AI deck. The AI deck is a little bit challenging, but gives you an option to play the game by yourself. And I think it makes sense that the AI deck is a little bit challenging and can be a little unfair sometimes, because if you're playing against an AI, you're going to be able to predict what they're going to do. So it only makes sense that it would be a little bit more of a challenge. But I think at its best, this game plays 3 players, probably at its best. 4 players is also definitely a viable option. However, for 2 players, I think I would probably rather play Rebellion than Outer Rim, because that one is designed specifically for 2 players. Not to say that this game is bad with 2 players, but I think one of the draws of a game like this is the fact that it's truly multiplayer. There's no cooperation. There's no, teams that win this game. This is you trying to win and make sure that everybody else loses. And so by playing more than 2, you're really kind of taking advantage of what this game has to offer. Now, let's talk about the time it takes to play this game. This game can be played in about 2 hours, a little more or a little less depending on the number of people or how new they are. This game isn't particularly rules heavy, so it won't be overcomplicated for newer gamers, and that can be a good thing, but it also means it's not overly complex if you're looking for a very challenging game system or anything with some type of advanced mechanics. It's a little bit cut and dry, and I think there's pros and cons to that type of system, because that's one of the things that I think you can potentially add upon with maybe future expansions. Now, as far as the components for this game, the components, I kind of rank them as mediocre. And while that has its pros and cons because the cost is a little bit lower, a lot of games from Fantasy Flight come in at about the $100 price point. This one is a little bit closer to the $70 price point, or the $65, $70, $69. I think it's MSRP at $69.99. So that is allows them to bring the price down a little bit while you are getting a lot of game. Most of your components are cardboard. Now, one thing that's really nice is the dice. The dice are X-Wing gold dice, and they're very, very attractive dice. They are also compatible with X-Wing, so you can also use those there and also pull in dice from X-Wing to here. One of the things you may want to do if you are an X-Wing player is bring in some extra dice, so this way everybody can have their own dice, because over the course of games, I've found that it would be helpful to have everybody having their own set of dice, because there's a lot of dice passing. There's a lot of combats where each person is going to be rolling more than 3 or 4 dice, and so instead of having to pass the dice back and forth, it's nice for everybody to be able to have their own. However, the dice that it comes with are sufficient for the game. Now, the player boards are actually pretty nice. They're going to mark how much fame you have. They're going to show you where your gear, your jobs, and bounties, as well as your reputation with the different clans. That much is pretty nice, or the different patrols, rather. And you're also going to have ship boards to the left of your player board, which are also useful and have great art. The art in this game is very, very nice. However, the quality of the components leaves a little bit to be desired. Instead of cardboard standees and cardboard tokens for the patrols, I would have much preferred plastic miniatures, but that would have also raised the price point a little bit. But for me, I definitely prefer components being higher quality, so that's something that I would have rather seen. Now, for mechanics, the way the game plays, it's actually pretty streamlined. Your turn is going to consist of 3 different phases. You've got a planning step, an action step, and an encounter step. And for most of those phases, you're going to kind of do the same thing each turn. Your planning step, you're usually going to move, but if you don't move, you can heal or you can get some money. And your action step, you can do as many actions as you want, but usually you don't have that many available. So usually it's going to be a market action. And the market action is going to consist of you either flipping over a card, cycling the top card of one of the market decks to the bottom. And the market deck is where you can buy things. You can buy new ships, or you can take on bounties, or buy some cargo or some illegal cargo, try to smuggle that. You can take on a job, maybe buy some weapons or armor for yourself, or weapons or hyperdrive boosters for your ship. All kinds of interesting things that you can get in the market decks. And so you can flip one card from the top to the bottom, or you can buy the top card. And that's also how you move patrols. But I'll talk a little bit about patrols a little bit later. But generally, that's the one action you're going to do just about every turn. You have to be on a planet in order to do that. So while you're moving for the planning step, usually you want to end on a planet, so this way you can do the most with your action step, and that's usually some type of market action, or some of the players have built-in action keywords. You can trade with other players here, you can deliver your cargo and things like that, things that you would kind of do automatically. But then the third part is your encounter step, and that's really where you have to make a decision, because during the encounter step, you can maybe meet a contact that's on a planet, and through these contact tokens, that's a pretty clever little part of the game, because they're always going to be different. So you may run into Chewbacca, you may run into Dengar, you never know who you're going to meet. Sometimes it's going to be good, sometimes it's going to be bad. If you are a bounty hunter, this is going to be a very important part of what you're doing, because you're actively seeking out bounties. And this is one way that you can do that. Or conversely, you can also have an encounter card on the cardboard tile that you're at, and it will depend on which planet or space your character is currently on before you figure out which card you're going to read. If you're in space, you pull a nav point card, but if you are on a planet, you're going to pull one of the planet cards, and you'll only read the part that applies to the planet that you're on. And that can be anything ranging from some type of gambling option, or maybe some kind of chance encounter you have, to a bounty, or some type of secret. Sometimes you'll get secrets that are basically cards that you'll keep face down, and you can use those whenever they tell you can use those. Sometimes those allow you to interact with another player, or surprise another player who maybe moves into your space, or allows you to do all sorts of different things, or be able to react to different situations. And so those secrets are going to be useful, and you can keep those for as long as you're not defeated. And by defeated, I mean taking lethal damage. Either to yourself or to your ship, because that's going to be a bad thing. You don't want to take too much damage. Then you'll have to heal, and you won't be able to move during your next turn. So a turn is pretty streamlined, and you'll just keep playing. You'll go in player turn order clockwise around the board over and over again until somebody gets 10 fame. Now, fame is the victory points for this game. And I like the fact that this game is built in design for you to be able to adjust the goalposts, so to speak. If you're finding that you don't have a whole lot of time, you can play to a smaller amount of fame. You can play to 8 fame if you want to. Or if you want a longer game, you can increase it all the way up to 12 fame and play a longer game. One thing I have noticed, though, is that it can be a little tricky to have a 4-player game where everybody's trying to get up to 12 fame, because of the fact that there's only so many bounties to go around, and there's only so many patrols to kill, and there's only so many ways to gain fame, and that, if everybody is close and you've got 4 players that each have 11 fame, you're going to very, very quickly start running low on options, and that can be a little bit frustrating. So I don't really suggest going for a 12 fame game unless you have less than 4. I would definitely stick to 10 fame or even 8 fame for your first game, just so you kind of get a quicker introduction to the game and realize the mistakes that you'll make as far as your strategy, because sometimes you'll pick somebody like Boba Fett, who's really good at becoming a bounty hunter, and maybe you'll accidentally decide you want to take on jobs and be a smuggler with Boba Fett, and maybe he's not as well suited to that particular strategy. So play the game a couple of times at a smaller point spread, maybe only 8 fame. You can even house rule a smaller amount. Maybe you only want to play till 6 fame for your first game, just to get it, over with pretty quick, so everybody understands how to play. Now, interacting with other players is one of the things that this game has a very small amount of. That is one of my biggest concerns, is that there really isn't very much player interaction. But the ways that you can interact are some ways through secrets, other ways through bounties. For example, I might get a bounty for Chewbacca, and he ends up on your crew. Maybe you hire him, and now I have to track you down to try to bring in my bounty on Chewbacca. And if I try to do that, you can then say, no, I'm going to defend my crew member. I'm going to defend Chewbacca, so now you have to fight me. So you can have some player versus player combat, but under normal circumstances, you can't just outright attack another player. However, there are exceptions to that because additionally, there are certain characters that can outright attack other players. Like Bosk, for example, once he levels up, he has the ability to attack anybody who's got fame that's higher than him. So he'll have to move to your location and he can just do a battle against you. And while that's, some people like that ability and it's good that you can have some player versus player combat, there isn't enough of a drawback and you can potentially have a negative gameplay experience if you find yourself attacking one person over and over again every turn. They may not actually be able to move and can't get away from you because if you do enough damage to them, they're going to have to stay where they are and then they're going to have to heal. And which means as long as you stay where you are, you can keep attacking them over and over again. And by the way, Bosk heals automatically every turn. He can heal 2 damage every turn. So Bosk doesn't even have to heal. He can just keep taking in money and keep attacking you. So there is the potential for some negative play experiences. So what I would suggest is if this is a game that interests you, you take a look at some of those potential experiences and maybe even house rule something. I would like to see some kind of rule where if you are defeated, you either get to move the person who defeated you away from you, because they have that rule with patrols. That's one of the things. Patrols are kind of the game's way of potentially disrupting you and even causing you to have fights against the game engine through these patrols, which are represented by the Rebels, the Imperials, the Hutts, and the Syndicate that are flying around the board. But you can get away from them if they defeat you because you get to move them one space in any direction. But that doesn't really apply to the player. And even if that were the case, somebody like Bosk could just keep attacking you. That actually happened in one of my games. I played as Bosk and wanted to see, just how much I could trap somebody. And I apologized afterwards because I realized it wasn't really a very fun game, but I just kept attacking this one player over and over and over again, and I had enough equipment that I was able to do a lot of wounds to this character and kept him having to stay put and heal every single turn. So I feel like there's a little bit of a flaw with the combat system, at least in that case. However, if you don't like, maybe take that mechanics or cutthroat game mechanics, you can simply just not use Bosk in your games because not every character has that ability. IG-88 is another one. He can potentially steal people's crew if they're droids, and that's a different type of take that mechanic where you might get a really good droid. Maybe you get K2SO on your crew, and IG-88 uses his ability to just steal your crew from you. That could get on your nerves a little bit, and so there are some characters that lean a little bit more towards that take that mechanic, and while that does count as player interaction, it's not necessarily positive player interaction. Although it does fit the theme of the game, it can definitely alienate certain types of players. So additionally, the other types of ways that you can interact with other players is through patrols. So when somebody buys a card from the market deck, a certain symbol is going to come up, and that's going to show you a patrol symbol and how many spaces it moves. Not every card has this, but a lot of the cards do. And when a symbol like that comes up after somebody takes a card from the market deck, either through purchasing, through credits or taking a bounty onto their player board, then you're going to move that patrol towards you. If there's a fork in the road, however, you get to choose which way it goes, and you might deliberately park a patrol in between somebody and their destination, kind of slowing them down. Now, patrols are one way that can force people into combat, because if somebody has negative faction with a patrol, not only will they have to stop at that patrol, but they'll also have to fight that patrol. So that's something that you can do, but also patrols are another way to gain victory points, so it's a double-edged sword. The problem with patrols, though, is that there are too few of them for that to be a viable strategy to win the game. If you want to build yourself to have a really nice ship to do space combat, which is one, I think, of the drawing factors to this game, is that you get to pick a ship when you start, and you can buy new ships. I can be Han Solo, and I can buy the Slave One if I want. I can't win the game through space combat, and because there are only 8 potential points that you can gain. And that's if you were to kill every killable patrol in the game. And that's very unlikely that you'll actually be able to do that. Patrols are actually very easy to ignore because there are multiple paths through hyperspace. It's a mechanic that has potential, but it's also a mechanic that you can just, in a lot of circumstances, you can completely ignore. In several of the games that I have played, players do not ever do combat against a patrol and almost exclusively just move around them to where they are almost never interacting with a patrol whatsoever. So I feel like there's future potential for patrols if they were to build upon them in an expansion. But in this core set, in this base game, in this board game, it's not really a core set, but in this game, the patrols feel like maybe something shy of a missed opportunity almost. My last criticism about the patrols is that the cardboard tokens that they use are much, much too big. And they have these little notches on the side so you can show which nav point they're at. But the problem is a lot of the nav points are much too close together. So while you're moving the patrols around, it can become near impossible to tell which nav point they're actually on. And that's a real bummer because if you just center them over the nav point, you might lose count of exactly how many spaces are in between. I would have really liked a smaller patrol token, especially one that might have had a clear base that you can put a little plastic ship on instead of this giant, quarter-sized cardboard token that really blocks your view of necessary information on the board. So I don't like the way patrols are represented in this game. I would have much rather had something clear, something that I can see what's underneath them, or at least something smaller so it doesn't get in the way and block important information on the board. Another thing I'd like to talk about is the downtime that you're going to face when you play this game. A lot of times, especially when in like 3 and 4 player games, it can feel like everybody's playing their own game because there really isn't a whole lot of player interaction. There should be a little bit more, but there just really isn't that much. One of the ways the game tries to mitigate this is by allowing the player to your left to roll any dice that the game system wants to be rolled. Maybe you have an encounter and there's stormtroopers and you have to fight a ground combat. The player to your left will roll the dice, but there's no decisions for the player to your left to make. So if it's just a dice roll, you could just use a dice tower and eliminate the need for another player to be there. It really doesn't matter who is rolling the dice. That's just giving the player to your left something arbitrary to do. So there's really nothing for you to do when it's not your turn. There's no decisions to really be made. And that is kind of a bummer because while you are at a 4-player game, there's a lot of downtime. You can get up and go to the bathroom, make yourself a sandwich and come back, and it's still not your turn yet, and you didn't miss anything. So I feel like that's a little bit of a bummer. Now, I'm exaggerating a little bit because there are cases where sometimes you will care about what another player is doing, but still there's nothing for you to actually do about it. The only thing that can really happen when it's not your turn is trades. Players can trade cards if they're in the same location. Players can trade credits at any time, but only during their turn. So you would have to have somebody initiate a trade with you for you to even have the option to interact. And based on my games, that really doesn't happen all that much. I don't think as much as they kind of would have liked. So there's really not much player interaction, much too much downtime when it's not your turn. If they do any more expansions for this game, I really hope that they add some type of mechanism for players to do something when it's not their turn. Like maybe at the beginning of each player's turn, everybody gets to do something. Everybody gets to move one patrol in one direction or something like that would just have given a lot more, input from everybody else at the table instead of just, another game where you just sit there and twiddle your thumbs and basically you'll be on your phone, checking your email the whole time while you're waiting, 15 minutes for it to be your turn again. Thereabouts. I mean, and this gets worse if you have slower players. If everybody's very, very fast, then this becomes less of a problem. But since this is a brand new game, your first couple of games probably won't be against fast players. Now, with that said, I do want to talk about the fun factor of this game because there is a fun factor. And one of the things that I always judge my games based on is, are they fun to play even if you lose? Like, do you have to win or do you have to be doing really well to have a good time? Or can you always have a good time when you play this game? And as many criticisms as I've given this game does have a pretty good amount of fun factor in it. First off, starting at the beginning, it is fun to be able to just pick your own character right away. Maybe you played a bounty hunter last time, and maybe you want to try to play a smuggler this time. Maybe you're going to be maybe you'll pick a different strategy at the start of each game. So I like the fact that you're going to be able to pick a starting ship also. Maybe you want a faster ship, or maybe you want a little bit more of an aggressive ship. Maybe you want to play Han Solo and you want to be more of a smuggler, or maybe you want to play Ketsu Onyo and be more of a space blaster. So I like the fact that you're going to be able to make some choices right away. I also like some of the interactions that can happen because there's definitely a lot of theme in this game. And so I may recruit some people that are on my crew and I can kind of build my own story as I'm doing that. And that can be a lot of fun. But I think to do that, to maximize the fun factor, you need to emphasize reading the text on the cards because you may have to do a skill check that wants you to test strength and you'll look at the keywords you have and see if you can pass this check. There's a lot of skill checks in this game. But instead of just looking at a card and saying, oh, I have to roll dice and see if I get a hit or a crit, instead of just doing that, it's better to read the card out loud to the table. That's one way you can kind of involve everybody. I'm like, oh, it seems they want to challenge me to an arm wrestling match, but that's okay. I've got Chewbacca on my crew, and I'll have him participate in that for me. So I really do like Outer Rim. I just don't love it. I feel like the few missed opportunities that it has can potentially be made up through expansions, but for right now, I think I'll just give it a 7 out of 10. You know, the downtime is really the biggest killer for me, and of course that can be made up if you have some fast players. Maybe it'll get better through more and more plays, although I've probably played it about 4 or 5 times now, at least full games. I feel like it has the potential to continue to be enjoyable, and that counts for a lot. And it's also just great for those times where you have 3 or 4 players that want to play. However, I'll be honest with you, if I have 2 players, we're probably going to play Rebellion instead, or a tabletop skirmish game like Armada or Legion or X-Wing or something like that. But for those times where you've got 3, this is a really good way to go. Despite its drawbacks, I still enjoy it very much. That being said, I do have some giveaway winners to announce, so if you've stuck with me, here is the time. So to start off, I want to announce the winner from Patreon for the Wedge Antilles promo card from Star Wars Celebration. This is for X-Wing 2.0. And that is going to go to Christian Snyder. So congratulations, Christian. Just send me a message and I'll get this out to you. Also, for the Amazon $25 gift card, the winner is going to be David Hills. Congratulations, David. Just email me, give me your contact information, and you can get that through Crabbok.com through the About Me. I've got a contact information section there. I've got all of my information there. So that's about it, guys. I want to thank you all so much for watching. Definitely check this game out. It is supposed to come out this May, so you should be able to find it in retail stores very, very soon. And it's a pretty good game. I mean, I hope you really like it. I think it's a pretty good intermediate game. I'm having a good time with it, but it could have been a little bit better. All right, guys, that's all I've got to say. I want to thank you all so much for watching. If you like this video, go ahead and give it a thumbs up. Let me know what you think down in the comments below. You can hop on Crabbok.com. You can also hop in my Discord and follow me on social media, and I got links to all that stuff down in the description as well. I want to thank you so much for watching, and as always, have a great day.